Our top focus this hour: Canada has expelled a senior Indian diplomat as it investigates the killing of a Khalistani terrorist. The development comes shortly after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau informed the country's parliament that there are quote-unquote credible allegations linking the Indian government to the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India has rejected these allegations as absurd and motivated, but let's just first listen into what Justin Trudeau had to say.
Number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Our top priorities have therefore been: one, that our law enforcement and security agencies ensure the continued safety of all Canadians, and two, that all steps be taken to hold perpetrators of this murder to account.
India's press release added that such unsubstantiated allegations seek to shift the focus from Khalistani terrorists and extremists. India says they've been provided shelter in Canada and continue to threaten India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It further went on to say that the inaction of the Canadian government on this matter, that's been a long-standing and continuing concern. This before urging the Government of Canada to take prompt and effective legal action against all anti-India elements operating from their soil. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was the chief of the separatist organization Khalistan Tiger Force. The 46-year-old moved to Canada in 1997 from Jalandhar in Punjab, and according to the Indian government, Nijjar was actively involved in the operationalization and the networking of the Khalistan Liberation Force. He was also active in the training and the financing of its members. He allegedly visited Pakistan in 2013-14 to meet Jagtar Singh Tara, who is currently serving a life sentence in India for his involvement in the assassination of former Punjab Chief Minister WION Singh. And Nijjar was also friendly with Dal Khalsa leader Gajinder Singh, one of the 5 hijackers of an Indian Airlines flight in 1981. Nijjar was also booked by the NIA in December 2020. It also declared a cash reward of ₹10 lakh for the information leading to his capture. And during the farmers' protests in New Delhi, he was also associated with the Sikhs for Justice group. The SFJ separatist organization is banned in India. He was seen in Australia during the voting for the so-called Khalistani referendum. Nijjar was shot dead by 2 masked men in the parking lot of a Gurdwara in Canada's British Columbia in June this year. Months later, the unsolved killing, it continues to reverberate in Canada. Trudeau told Parliament that he brought up the killing of Nijjar with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G20 summit. The Canadian Prime Minister also added that he conveyed to India's Prime Minister that any involvement from New Delhi would be unacceptable and that he's asked for cooperation in the investigation. Meanwhile, Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said that a top Indian diplomat has been expelled as a consequence.
We will protect Canada's sovereignty. I've conveyed these principles to my Indian counterpart, and I've also told him that we expect India's full collaboration to make sure that we get to the bottom of this. And as of today, and as a consequence, we've expelled a top Indian diplomat from Canada.
Now, on the other hand, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi conveyed strong concerns about Khalistani protests in Canada against India to Justin Trudeau on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi. For more on this, we're now being joined by Principal Diplomatic Correspondent Siddhant Sibal on a phone line. Thank you so much for joining us, Siddhant. Now, why did the Canadian Prime Minister fall short of presenting any solid information to back these so-called credible allegations of a potential India link?
Well, essentially, we have seen his statement in the Parliament, and of course, he hasn't come out with any evidence. These are allegations. It is still it looks like being pursued by the Canadian authorities. But all in all, this is something of a very serious nature, and this impacts the relationship between the two countries. And it looks like the relationship has touched rock bottom with these allegations. We have seen the comments by the Indian side in which it has called out Canada on providing safe havens to Khalistani terrorists and extremists. That is the word which is being used by the Indian side. And I do expect further action by the Indian authorities over this remark by the Canadian Prime Minister. And not only the Canadian Prime Minister, but opposition leader have also made remarks against India. And India has been in the past calling on Canada to take strong action against Khalistani elements. But there hasn't been any action taken by the Canadian government. We know that how openly there have been calls by so-called referendum by Khalistani elements. In fact, on 10th of September, when the Canadian Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister were holding meeting here in Delhi on the sidelines of the G20 summit, there was a so-called referendum happening in Canada. So essentially, the Canadian government is being seen absent when it comes to taking strong action against Khalistani elements, and this has not only concerned Indian government but also perturbed. And this is something that the Indian government has raised in the past. The Indian Prime Minister himself raised during his meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister, but no action has been seen.
Right, absolutely, Siddhant. Of course, India has rejected these allegations, calling them absurd and motivated. Now, how will Trudeau's latest allegations affect the already marred India-Canada relations? As you said, these have truly hit rock bottom.
Well, the relationship, of course, as I pointed out, is and has hit rock bottom. I do expect some action by the Indian government, and expelling of diplomats is something that we have seen with the relationship with Pakistan. So essentially, it looks like Canada has replaced in that terms when it comes to relationship with Pakistan. And whatever has happened, it's going to impact the relationship for a pretty long time. In fact, I can see relationship going back to 10 or 20 years. There is already a pause in the trading pact as well. And the Khalistani concern, which India has said is domestic politics of Canada, which is seeping into the foreign policy, is something that is not being taken, or action is not being taken by the Canadian authorities on this. In fact, recently there was a press conference in which the Canadian NSA saying that India has been interfering in the Canadian domestic politics. This question was raised, to which the Indian External Affairs Minister said that the Canadian side is basically making a false allegations and dismiss these allegations. But this time the allegations are of a serious nature and inside the parliament. So, of course, I do expect a strong action by the Indian side.
Right. Well, Siddhant, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this. We will, of course, continue to track all the developments closely. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.